Hi, we're going to use this video to try to, as quickly as possible, show you how to edit as efficiently as possible. And we're going to start by focusing in on the things that students leave in the most because they occur the most in interviews and stuff. They're verbal viruses, ums and uhs, you knows and ands, anything that adds to the audio, something without meaning that shouldn't be there. False starts or repeats of words. And so I have some examples here. We'll start, and so, by the way, is another verbal virus. First of all, you have to be able to zoom in close enough to be able to see where each of the waves are, because if you stay out here, you aren't going to be able to see where your edits are. So use this to zoom in close enough to be able to see where the waves go down and where you have spaces.
They've really been...
Okay, so she said they've really been... So we don't need the bit. So how I know where the bit is, she said they've bit. So there was a pause before the bit. So this is the first thing after the pause, so that must be the bit. So I'm going to highlight that and delete it.
They've really been picking up. We've got a...
Now we have a we've got. And so we're going to have to select here. First of all, the easiest way is to figure out where did we've got, which is what we want to keep, start.
We've got a...
And so I can figure that out by looking at the waves and going, where does this wave drop into another wave and then come back up? And that's right here.
We've got a...
And so I'll play that and go, okay, is that a full weave? If so, then that's where I need to edit. So I'm going to select from there back up to the beginning because that was just the we've got. So the pause is where we go into our new word.
We've got a larger Facebook presence than we had before, and we're trying to do some more events and some more...
Okay, so there's an Now, sometimes students will select an area like this, and then they'll go...
some more...
Okay, I got more than I needed. And then they'll go and try to reselect again. That's being inefficient. If you went ahead and selected an area and maybe you got half your oh, that's not the full don't unselect and reselect. Instead, move around the sides so it selects more. So adjust your selection rather than reselecting, because reselecting puts you back to lost to where do I need to go? Adjusting your selecting just influences one way or another to help you be able to narrow down what you need to edit quicker.
Some more...
Okay. And I can tell ends right here because there's a big change in levels right here from that to that. And S's usually look like that small line, so that's a hint too. Anytime you make an edit, you should really click back and listen back to what you just made to make sure it's a good edit. A lot of students will go all the way back to the very beginning. That's going to be inefficient. It's going to be wasting your time. Just click back a couple of words, not phrases, words, and play it back.
Events and some more, just counted it up.
There's a
just...
So I'm looking at it. I knew there was a pause there that leads into the so that's how I know where it begins. But where does it end? Let's figure that out.
Just counted it.
There's a noise there.
Just counted it up. Just counted it up.
Okay, and that D sounds like a J, so I'm not really crazy about it. But it looks like that's where discounted ends. So I'm going to drag all the way up to the pause because I know that's where the begins. So a great way to do it is think, where does this start? Where does it end? And so how you know where it ends is you know where what you want to keep begins. And so select that part where what you want to keep begins and highlight to the beginning of what you want to delete.
Or discounted options whenever we can and just get the word out of where we are and the awesome animal.
Okay, so now we had a weird noise. The it awesome, but we knew there were pauses around it. The it awesome. So pause, noise, pause. It's probably this. It's good to go ahead and listen.
Yeah. Here we are and the awesome animals that we have. So they're picking up and going good.
A little bit of noise there.
They're
okay. There we go.
So they're picking up and going good.
So how many dogs have been at the shelter for longer than 30 days?
Okay. Now I'm about to show you a smack. This is often left in, and there's no reason for it.
How many dogs have been at the shelter for longer than 30 days?
Did you hear that? You should have. That happens a lot in interviews. People like to go before they start talking. But does anybody like to hear it? Well, I don't, and most listeners don't. And it's not a word that adds anything, so it's got to go. So I can easily just tell by looking. Look, it looks different than all the other waves. The other waves have some width to them. This looks like a spike when you zoom out. And so when you zoom in, it still kind of looks like a spike. So that already tells you this is something that's probably not audio that we want in this interview. And once you hear it, it's not. So highlight and delete. Pretty simple.
For longer than 30 days.
Oh, right.
There was a lengthy breath right there. We get into breaths in another video. A few more edits, for example, but I think you've seen the highlights, so if you're ready to go on to practicing these editing exercises, you're excused.
Shelter for longer than 30 days. One has been there. At least one has been there.
Okay, this is a false start. One has been there, at least one has been there. So we only need the at least one has been there, what she committed to. So let's find the beginning of that.
One has been there more than there. At least one.
And you see what I'm doing? I'm just clicking around. I'm not listening to the whole thing and watching it and then finally going, oh, well, that's where it came up. I'm just clicking where I think it might be and listening. And then I can narrow down by clicking around where can I get closer to this.
There. At least one has been 30 days. One has been there. At least.
Okay, so it's in here. So I'm going to zoom in a little closer so I can see. Looks like the wave changes from that to that right here.
At least one is.
And so there's our at least. And where does what she first says begin?
30 days. One has been there. One has been.
Okay, so you see I'm dragging my selection to catch the beginning of it and playing it to figure out where it is. And now I can just delete from my selection. So it's great to select as you're looking for the waves. Don't find it and then find the other and then go, okay, wait, where was that? That ends up being a lot of looking. Find it, select it, and drag one way or the other to find the other edit. And of course you would need to play that back. But
Animals that have been there for a long time.
Here, there. So we want to get rid of here or there.
Animals that have been there for a long. Here. Options to those animals that have been there for a long.
And there's a little bit of a pause there. We don't like that.
There for a.
So highlight a little bit of that.
Been there for a long.
Still awkward.
Have been there for a long time.
I chose there instead of here because here on KEOM is not where the animals have been. So I think that's why she corrected herself and said there. So always choose the grammar, one that sounds like it flows the best, and two that sounds like it makes the most sense.
Long time, or needs some medical recovery, or a little bit of.
So we have a little. So it was a little bit after a pause, so it's probably after this. And then here's where I see the change in the waves. So
a little bit of.
Play it, and that's the a little bit. So this must be the And remember, S's make that long drawn out, so that's probably the
Medical recovery, or a little bit of.
But I still hear us, and so I want to zoom in and get rid of that.
Or a little bit of socialization training as well, because we.
And one more for you.
Because.
There's a because in here somewhere. Is it after this?
Because we want.
I hear a little
Because we want.
There's the because.
Well, because we want to give them every advantage to getting adopted.
And it's fun once you get the hang of it. You just zoom in, figure out from one point to one point. You'll never be able to read audio waves like a book, but once you can figure out where one sound ends and the next begins just by zooming in and seeing the change in the waves, you should be able to go, okay, well, it's 2 sounds away or 3 sounds away, and narrow it down by that. Click around. Don't listen back to the whole thing. When you listen back to an edit, just go back a couple of words, not a couple of phrases, because you want to be efficient. You want to be able to get in, get your edits done, then listen to the whole thing and see if it sounds good. Then, of course, after you've done all that work, save. But if you aren't confident in your edits, save as. That way you always have the original to go back to.